Venerable Upanadipa was born on March 16, 1933, in Ninpalai village, Bilin town in the south of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, so he is also known as Venerable Bilin. His father was U Kyo Mu and mother was Da Hla Thin. He began attending primary school at the age of 8 at the monastery in the village and at the age of 12 became a novice monk. He graduated from the Hitlakaryi Buddhist school in the Tun and passed the Tripitaka exam with honors. From then on, he became a Dharma master, Sasana Daja Sirapavara Dhammakarya. His postgraduate work was carried out in Yangon and Mandalay. In 1967, he went to Mahasi Yaiktha Monastery in Yangon and practiced a training course on Vipassana meditation. Under the guidance of Venerables U Pandita, U Janaka, and U Senwara. The following year, he was transferred to Jayapintha Sasana Yaiktha Monastery, near Prome, as Zen master, and here he taught continuously for 17 years. Venerable Elder U Pandita Bhavamsa recognized him as senior Zen master Nayaka Kamathana Korea and invited him to teach at the Mahasi Center in Yangon. He preached here for 6 years. Venerable Upanadipa preached Dharma in many places around the world, including Nepal, Malaysia, Singapore and Australia. Venerable Bilin then served at the Mahasi Zen Center, near Wigan, in England, when the community's staff requested a venerable who was versed in both the teachings of the sutras, pariyatti, and practice meditation, padapati, to teach them. In December 1999, he was invited to teach at Tathagata Meditation Center in San Jose, California. Here, his calm and quiet presence helped promote Buddhism in other parts of the world. He has just been awarded the noble title Agga Maha Siddhama Jataka Daja, according to his merits of propagating the Dharma overseas. 1. Aggregate of form, Rupakanda collection of material phenomena. One day, a monk named Ayasma Radha came to see the Buddha, who was currently residing at Kai Veen Monastery, a monastery donated by the millionaire layman Anathapindika. After bowing to the Buddha and sitting down to one side, Bhikkhu Ayasma Radha immediately told the world-honored one that there was a question that he wanted to hear the answer to. World-honored one, there is the word living beings, satta, in this world. What can be used to explain and evaluate as a living being in this world? Buddha replied, good man Radha, living being is a living being, one who has a desire, an attachment, or a love for material phenomena, Rupakanda. Affection for material phenomena also calls them living beings. Here, the first meaning of the word sentient being, a living being, includes different degrees of desire, lust, love and attachment, all of which are synonymous. The second meaning of being is the verbal form meaning, to cherish. Even if someone is interested in and attached to material things, or just has an ordinary affection, that is still called a living being, and this happens due to ignorance. If we carefully and properly observe the physical forms of the human body, what will we see? The human body consists of many groups of 5 parts. The first group of 5 items, including hair, fur, nails, teeth and skin, because it ends in the skin, is temporarily called the group that ends in the skin. The second group of 5 dishes includes meat, tendons, bones, marrow, and kidneys, because it ends in the kidney, it is temporarily called the kidney-ending group. The third group of 5 dishes includes heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen and lungs. The large intestine, small intestine, fresh food, old food, and brain form the fourth group of 5 items. Those 4 groups of 5 items are combined into 20 parts of the body, expressed into matter by the earth element, Pathadhigata. In whatever form they are manifested. Those physical phenomena are organized into the earth element and have these characteristics: hardness, softness, and solidity. Why are those 20 parts of the body considered to come from the earth element? It is because they all have the main nature of being hard. The remaining 3 elements are also present in the 20 parts of the body mentioned above, but they are not very obvious, because they do not dominate. The 3 elements are, the water element, water, Apo Dhatu, the fire element, fire, Teju Dhatu, and the wind element, wind, Vayu Dhatu. Even a strand of hair, when we look closely, has all four elements. However, the main quality of hair is hardness, and that is the nature of the earth element. For that reason, hair is often called the earth element, Pathavi Dhatu. The remaining 19 parts in the four groups of 5 items mentioned above are the same, collectively called the earth element, because they all have the main nature of hardness. A meditator who is able to perceive hardness is experiencing the earth element. In the same way, the fire element is also experienced, if warmth or heat is observed. The element of wind can be perceived when tension or vibration is evident during a moment of meditation. And when the water element predominates in a physical condition, dampness or adhesion is noticed by the meditator. Meditators should not dwell on the notion of the four elements. He should be aware only of natural qualities, such as hardness, softness, warmth, heat, tension, vibration, wetness, and adhesion. It is absolutely necessary that the meditator should not go beyond the vision of the properties of nature. Why so? Because, instead of observing natural phenomena, the meditator let himself get lost in observing concepts such as men, women, men's hair, women's hair, etc. While practicing vipassana meditation, it is very necessary not to get entangled in ideas about the body and ideas about personality. The most important thing is to see only the natural phenomena of the four elements. In addition to the 20 body parts mentioned above, there are also 12 parts of the body that have the main characteristics of the water element. These are, bile, in the liver, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, hard fat, liquid fat, tears, saliva, nasal mucus, joint mucus, and urine. All of these items have the property of oozing and sticking. Therefore, they are considered to belong to the water element. The remaining 3 elements, earth, wind, fire, are also present in the 12 items mentioned above, although they are not very obvious. There are 4 forms of the fire element, Teju Dhatu, in the body. The heat of the body temperature, in its normal state, is called Jarana Teju. Body heat causes the aging process, causing people to become old. When the temperature rises above the normal temperature of the body, and the thermometer measures it higher than 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit, that heat is called Santapana Teju. The unbearable heat, causing people to complain that it is too hot, is called Dahana Teju. The 4th heat is in the digestive tract of the stomach and intestines, used to digest food, called Pakaka Teju. These 4 types of temperature are both warm and cold. They do not represent any woman or man at all. They have no self-entity, they are simply elements of heat. There are 6 types of wind patterns, Yodhatu, in the body. These are, 1. Wind blowing up, 2. Wind blowing down, 3. Wind in the digestive tract, 4. Wind in the abdomen, 5. Air exhaled in and out, 6. Air spread throughout body. Every action of the body such as bending, stretching, sitting, standing, walking, etc. is influenced by the last type of wind, also known as Angamanganusari. All 6 forms of the wind element have the nature of tension and vibration. There is no self-entity in them at all, nor can any man, woman, or self be found in them. Up to this point, I have sketched an outline of the 4 elements, their manifestation in the body and their cells. 20 types belong to the earth element, 12 types belong to the water element, 4 types belong to the earth element, 12 types belong to the water element, 4 belongs to the fire element, and the 6 types belong to the wind element. Although the summary is a bit short, when examined carefully, this physical body only consists of those 4 elements. When the elements are established in appropriate areas of the body, the entire physical body as a whole appears as if it were an entity with a self. Without knowing this clearly through the insight of vipassana, an ordinary person will perceive the whole collection of elements as my body. Its body. Its body. Woman's body, or man's body. Also because of this wrong perception, affection for the physical body arose in his mind. In fact, the physical body can be compared to a pile of foam, a collection of small water bubbles that we see on a stream or river. The existence of bubbles is caused by the pressure of the air inside them. When bunched together in many groups, the bubbles become piles of foam, some as big as a fist, or as big as a head, or even bigger. Seen through the naked eye, the piles of foam appear to be very durable. However, if we study them carefully and properly, we will see their impermanence very clearly. Who has used bubble wrap to make tables and chairs or build houses? In the same way, this physical body is seen as permanent under ordinary eyes when looking at the appearance from head, torso to limbs. The physical body is also considered a character such as a man or a woman, etc. That body seems to last forever, and it can look so attractive and beautiful. The concept of an existing, living entity often arises in the mind of a person with ordinary eyes. But for people with a view of vipassana meditation, the physical body is like a mass of bubbles, without any inherent self at all. It is just the collection of 32 parts of the body: hair, fur, fingernails, toenails, teeth, skin, tendons, bones, etc. are all impure. There is no essence that is permanent, no beauty, no characteristics of an eternal being. That is the image of the physical body that appears under the eyes of someone who has insight into vipassana meditation. However, when the naked eye looks at the physical body, it appears to be permanent, lovely, easy to manage, and has a self. That's why people often enjoy and cherish the physical body. Just as the Buddha said, those who are attached to material things, or are heavily attached to material things, are called sentient beings. Satta. 2. Sentiment aggregate, Vedanakanda collection of feelings. O good man Radha, whoever is fond of, or has strong feelings for, the aggregates, is called a living being, Satta. The Buddha taught that there are 3 types of feelings in the physical body. 1. Experiencing a desirable thing is a pleasant feeling, Sukha Vedana. 2. Experiencing an unpleasant thing is a painful feeling, Dukkha Vedana. 3. Experiencing something that is neither desirable nor undesirable is a feeling of equanimity, Upekkha Vedana. Because neutral feelings are neutral and do not appear clearly in the senses, most people are more familiar with pleasant and painful feelings. In the hot summer, a person feels refreshed when a cool breeze blows. In winter, wrapping ourselves in a blanket makes us feel warm and comfortable. Stretching our legs and rubbing our arms when we are tired makes us relaxed and refreshed. Every time we experience peace in the body, we are enjoying a feeling of happiness, Sukha Vedana. Ordinary people receive that pleasant feeling with the thought, I feel comfortable, or I am at peace. Feelings such as pain in the body, too hot, too cold, body restlessness, itching, are called painful feelings, Dukkha Vedana, which means unpleasant feelings. Ordinary people view them as, my painful feelings. All 3 types of feelings arise at the threshold of the mind. Pleasure, Sukha Vedana, a pleasant feeling, arises in the mind when we encounter, or when we think of, a pleasant object. Unpleasant feeling, Dukkha Vedana, arises in the mind when we encounter, or when we think of, fearful or depressing things. Equanimity, Upekkha Vedana, a feeling of neutrality that arises in the mind when we encounter, or when we think of, things that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Whenever the above feelings arise in the mind, they are often misinterpreted as, I feel pleasant. I feel uncomfortable. I feel indifferent. A pleasant feeling, Sukha Vedana, arises when a pleasant image is seen, a lovely voice is heard, or a pleasant odor is smelled. That feeling of pleasure is thought of as, my feeling. Immediately, a perception such as, I am happy, arises. When an unpleasant image is seen, or an unpleasant voice is heard, or a foul odor is smelled, the feeling of Dukkha Vedana arises. Equanimity, Upekkha Vedana, arises when an image is felt that is neither attractive nor distasteful. When a voice that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant is heard, when an odor that is neither fragrant nor foul is smelled. We also think that those equanimous feelings also belong to us. In fact, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neutral feelings are simply feelings. When a person does not observe an object carefully, or is not alert enough to perceive its true nature, entanglement with that object immediately arises. Therefore, the term saddha is used to refer to humans who are entangled in those feelings. But for mindful meditators, with enough mindfulness to clearly perceive the true nature and characteristics of those feelings, the degree of entanglement with them is minimized. And at the right moment, wisdom, awareness of the path, that will clear away the attachment to those emotions will arise in the meditator's mind. Because the following story, quoted in the sutras, is related to the issue of feelings, Vedana, I would like to tell you the story of two close friends who left their comfortable lives to become two great disciples of the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta, who had supreme wisdom, and Venerable Maudgalyana, Mahamoggallana, who achieved supernatural powers of insight. After realizing the emptiness of life and enjoying his frivolous pleasures, Upatissa, later Venerable Sariputta, and his close friend Kalita, later Venerable Maudgalyana, agreed with each other set out to find the truth to help them escape suffering, old age, illness and death. They began to receive teachings and became disciples of a famous ascetic master at that time named Sanjaya. But after having learned all that the ascetic had the strength to teach, they realized that there was nothing quintessential in his teachings. Therefore, they left and continued to search for the truth, by traveling everywhere in the world of Jambudvipa, which is today's India. By chance, one day Upatissa met a monk, Venerable Assaji, an arhat, one of the Buddha's first 5 disciples. Seeing the majestic appearance of the Venerable Ache while begging for alms, Upatissa immediately followed. Then the milkman prepared a seat and brought water so that the bhikkhu could sit and eat peacefully. When the Venerable Ace had finished eating, Upatissa came next to him and asked, Sir, who is your teacher and how did he teach the Dharma? The Venerable Ace replied, My teacher is the Buddha. Because I have just become a bhikkhu under the guidance of the Buddha, I can only teach you a few very brief things. Upatissa wanted to know some of these things, so he said, So, please tell me briefly what you have learned from your teacher. And the Venerable Ace immediately replied, My guru, the Buddha, taught that all phenomena arise due to causes and conditions. He also taught about the cessation of all conditioned dharmas and their consequences of them, and the existence of nirvana, the state of complete cessation. Although that teaching was very brief, Upatissa also understood the profound meaning. The awareness of the first path and fruition, the realization of nirvana, suddenly arose in his mind. Upatissa immediately attained the status of Sotapanna, that is, one who is entering the holy water stream. Wishing to meet the Buddha, Upatissa asked Bhikkhu Ace Buddha where he currently resides. Next, he quickly set out to find his close friend Kalita to tell the news. Looking at Upatissa's peaceful and satisfied face, Kalita immediately asked, Hey Upatissa, surely you have seen the truth that we have been searching for so long, right? Upatissa immediately recounted his meeting with Bhikkhu Ace and recited the verse he had learned from him. Having just heard the verse, Kalita reached the first stage of enlightenment, and like Upatissa, Kalita attained Sotapanna status. Next, the two close friends decided to meet the Buddha. But first, they came to say goodbye to their teacher, ascetic Mr. Sandajia, and then invited him to accompany them to see the Buddha. However, because he had taught for many years to a very large number of disciples, the Sanda family now could not lower himself to become a student for just one person. Stating that just like a large lake cannot become a small pond, the Taoist refused the invitation and told them, disciples with wisdom will come to study with the Buddha, while students lacking wisdom will come to study with the Buddha, intelligence will come to me. You go, but I will stay here. There were 250 disciples of the Sangha family who followed Upatissa and Kalita to see the Buddha while he was preaching the Dharma. He stopped to receive their respect. When everyone asked to be ordained together, the Buddha turned to his new disciples and said, Bhikkhus, the Dharma is well preached. Now you should live a life of Brahman to end all suffering. From that day on, Upatissa was known under the title Sariputta and Kalita, under the title Mahamoggallana. Then the Buddha continued to preach the Dharma, and after the teachings, all the new bhikkhus attained arhatship. But this supreme position was postponed for the two chief disciples because they still needed further training for their future responsibilities in the Sangha. 7 days after receiving the bhikkhu ordination, Venerable Maudgalyana attained arhatship, Arahata Magga, the highest stage of enlightenment. As for Venerable Sariputra, until the full moon day of February, the full moon, he was still practicing Anupassana Vipassana, insightful reflection, based on the Long Trayo Sutta, Daiganika Sutta, Vietnamese Tripitaka, Majjhima Nikaya, 2 Quetzales, Sutra number 74, page 345 and following. On that full moon day, Venerable Sariputa's nephew was named Sariputta. Daiganika, Truong Trayo, who remained to study with the monk Sanda family, suddenly remembered that his uncle often returned home after listening to the teachings of the masters, but it's been more than 15 days since my uncle came to see the Buddha. Why haven't I seen him return home yet? Therefore, Daiganika decided to find out what his uncle had learned, so he set out to see Buddha. At that time, the world-honored one was residing in Sukharakkhata cave, on Gijakuta mountain, near Rajagaha city. When Daiganika arrived, Venerable Sariputta was standing behind the Buddha and fanning him, to listen to the entire sermon he was about to preach. After bowing to the Buddha, Daiganika immediately said, "Sage Gautama, I don't like anything." The word "what" here means all rebirths. The direct meaning of what Daiganika said was that he did not want to be reborn again after this life. Since he said, "I like nothing," that dislike must also include nihilism. That's why the Buddha pointed out, since you don't like anything, then you probably don't like even this point of view that you don't like. But Daiganika's answer was so vague that the Buddha added to clarify Daiganika's point of view, the view of eternality can be easily accepted, for it is easy to enjoy and cling to. On the other hand, the nihilistic view can also be easily rejected and discarded. Because it is easy to hate and discard. As soon as he heard the Buddha's words, Daiganika jumped to the wrong conclusion. Sage Gautama praised my point of view. The Buddha immediately further explained the dangers and benefits of the two views of immortality and nothingness. Those who follow the view of immortality will engage in good deeds, expecting good consequences in the next life. They enjoying rebirths and cherish future existences. According to the commentary, a person who advocates the doctrine of immortality finds it difficult to get rid of the notion of an eternal self. Ordinary Buddhists, when they do not have enough knowledge about Vipassana meditation, do not like to have to accept that there is no permanent self. They do not understand the truth about the continuous flow of physical and mental phenomena that arise and disappear every moment. And they also refuse to admit the fact that arhats never have to be reborn again, because they have eradicated craving at the moment of attaining Arahata Magga. You advocate this theory. Immortals like to believe that when arahants pass away, they enter a realm of supramundane existence formed by physical and spiritual phenomena. The commentators return. Commentary explains that, because the eternalists believe in present and future existence, and understand the karmic consequences of wholesome and unwholesome actions, they practice good deeds are only because they are afraid of doing bad deeds. But they enjoy being reborn forever, even if they meet the omniscient Buddha, or one of his disciples also find it difficult to let go of their view of immortality. Even though they rarely commit unwholesome actions, their view is also difficult to give up. On the other hand, those who advocate nihilism do not know that present existence is caused by the past, and future existence is caused by present existence. Therefore, they do not believe in the karma of good and bad actions. Therefore, they do not make any effort to cultivate good deeds, and they have no fear when engaging in bad deeds. And because they do not believe in a next life after this life, they refuse to accept the idea of rebirth after this present life. However, if those who advocate nihilism meet the omniscient Buddha, or his disciples, they will also be willing to abandon their views. If they strive to realize the paramithas, paramis, perfections, they can also attain the highest stage of enlightenment, the path and Arahata Magga and Phala, just like the Buddha and the Arhats did. Therefore, even though they made big mistakes, their views were easy to throw away. Not understanding what had just been said, Daiganika also thought that the Buddha was praising his nihilistic view. To broaden Daiganika's perspective and correct his misunderstanding, the Buddha immediately explained to him more about the three types of views: 1. The eternally delightful view of all things, 2. A nihilistic view that hates all things, and 3. A half-like, half-hate view of all things. If anyone clings to one of those three views, he will argue with those who support the other two views. Therefore, the Buddha encouraged Daiganika to throw away his nihilistic view and taught him how to completely eliminate attachment to his physical body. Your body is made up of the four great associations, into the elements earth, water, fire and wind. That body is formed by the combination of the father's sperm and the mother's egg. Being nourished by food, that body grows and keeps it healthy. It is necessary to always follow the correct method of nourishment, but that body still retains its impermanent nature. The Buddha also taught Daiganika how to realize the true nature of the body, the impermanent nature, which causes suffering, such as poison, pain, arrows, unwholesomeness, illness, and evil. Foreigners, like sabotaging enemies. He also said that we should observe that this body has no soul and cannot be controlled. If anyone knows how to contemplate this body like that, then the affection for the body will be gradually eroded, becoming weaker and weaker. After teaching Daiganika how to contemplate the physical body, the Buddha continued to talk about how to contemplate three types of feelings: pleasant feelings, painful feelings and neutral feelings. All three types of feelings cannot exist at the same time. If one feeling is present, the other two feelings must be absent at that time. Because one feeling repels the other two when it arises, the meditator can clearly note the transition from one type of feeling to the other. And when this change is clearly recognized, the impermanent nature of feelings is thoroughly understood. Depending on conditions and causes and conditions, feelings arise. While noting physical and mental phenomena in the body, we can clearly understand the relationship between dependent origination and their nature of death after arising. The Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, taught meditators an effective method to clearly perceive the changes of those phenomena. The instruction, in order for the recognition to be successful, is based on the rising and falling of the abdomen. Why the belly? Just as the breath is coming in and out evenly, representing life, the belly also rises and falls rhythmically with the breath. Therefore, it is much easier for the meditator to maintain focus on the rising and falling of the abdomen, and return to that place after a few moments, if he stops because of lapses in noting. When the meditator focuses on the movements of the abdomen, pausing only to mentally note temporary distractions, painful sensations in the body may arise. As soon as the meditator becomes aware of that painful feeling, he must immediately note in his mind that pain. Pain, pain. When an unpleasant feeling arises, also note that unpleasant, unpleasant, unpleasant. A pleasant feeling should be noted as happy, happy. And if the meditator feels happy, then note it as happy, happy. But as for neutral feelings, when they arise, it is very difficult to pay attention to them, because they do not attract our attention. The meditator just needs to continue to note in his mind what physical and spiritual phenomena are currently evident. Thus, the meditator will clearly see the pleasant and unpleasant feelings that have just arisen and then disappear. The meditator will understand their impermanent nature, their unsatisfactory nature, and their egoless nature, having no soul at all. When those three characteristics are clear and transparent in the mind, the meditator will feel fed up with them, fed up with all phenomena and fed up with their arising and passing away. The Buddha immediately explained to Daiganika how the insight knowledge of the wisdom of contemplation of aversion, Nibbidanyapasana Nana, arose in the meditator's mind. That wisdom arises when, having clearly seen the three characteristics of the aggregate of feelings, we become fed up with all three types of feelings: pleasant feelings, painful feelings and neutral feelings. The goal of practicing vipassana meditation is to attain the insight of boredom, Nibbidanyapasana Nana. Once, through experience, the practitioner has reached the point of seeing the nature of the arising and passing away of phenomena. Material and spiritual, In this long claw sutra, Daiganika, the types of physical phenomena have not yet been analyzed in detail. The teaching consists only of contemplation on the collection of apparent form of material phenomena. A noteworthy point is that even though physical phenomena have not been meticulously analyzed as in the Abhidhamma, meditators can still reach the experience of the insight of bored contemplation, Nibbidanyapasana Nana. Another point worth noting is that in this sutra, when contemplating spiritual phenomena, only the explanation of three types of feelings is developed, other types of spiritual phenomena are not discussed. Arrive. But once one is aware of the appearance of those three types of feelings, it is enough for the meditator to gain insight into the insight of bored contemplation, Nibbidanyapasana Nana. The Buddha also explained the knowledge of the path, fruition, and recollection that occurs in the practitioner's mind when he or she attains enlightenment. When the meditator becomes bored contemplating the impermanent nature of physical and mental phenomena, attachment is swept away and the insight of path wisdom arises. Due to the arising of the knowledge of arahantship and arahantship, arahata magga on phala, the practitioner is completely liberated from all sufferings. When reaching this stage of complete liberation, the meditator immediately realizes that he is completely liberated. After being liberated like that, he immediately recalled to review as follows: I no longer have to be reborn. I have completely practiced the Noble Eightfold Path. I have done what needed to be done, and there is nothing more to do to be liberated. Next, the Buddha explains how the supreme stage of enlightenment is attained and how the knowledge of recollection takes place in an arhat. He also explained to Daiganika that those who have attained that path and fruition never argue with anyone. Good man Daiganika, an arhat can use concepts such as I, you, woman, and men, but he does not perceive them as entities of character, or as having an existing soul. The reason why he does not argue with anyone is because he has mastered at truth. In the Flower Sutta, Pupa Sutta, were the aggregates of association, Pali, Kanthavagga. The Buddha also said, I never argued with anyone, but people like the wanderer Sasaka, Vekanasa, Vikanatha, Asalayana and a rich man named Upali came here to try to argue with me. Telling them the truth does not mean arguing, because what I told them is all the truth. Not only the Buddha, but anyone who is preaching according to the true Dharma should not be seen as arguing with others. They are explaining the truth to those who are trying to argue and oppose that truth. Speaking the truth just means trying to educate those who are still confused. While the Buddha was teaching Daiganika about the three types of feelings, the Venerable Sariputta continuously stood fanning behind the Buddha, listening carefully to all the explanations. After the teachings, the Venerable reached the stage of complete enlightenment, and from the state of Sotapanna, he became an arhat. Another theory about the enlightenment of Venerable Sariputta is found in the Anyapata Sutta. It is narrated that on the full moon day, the Venerable became an arhat by contemplating the impermanent nature of the meditation factors, jhana factors. And also in another sutra, the Venerable Sariputta said that he himself attained arhatship by contemplating the internal Dhamma. All three theories are compatible, if we conclude that the Venerable reached the supreme stage of enlightenment by listening to Dhamma teachings, while at the same time entering into meditation and contemplating the corresponding feelings accompanying of that meditation period. After the Buddha's sermon, Daiganika attained the path and fruition of Sotapanna. It was thanks to the insight of Vipassana meditation that he attained when contemplating feelings, Vedana. After finishing preaching the sermon, the Buddha left Vulture Mountain and used his supernatural powers to return to Velluvana, bamboo forest, monastery. Next, with the power of telepathy, he convened a meeting of the Sangha. Venerable Sariputta, with the supernatural powers he had just acquired, received the message and also used his supernatural powers to go to the meeting place. There were a total of 1,250 monks attending this congress. This gathering of monks is memorable for four special reasons. 1. The time is the full moon night of February, which has an astronomical conjunction with the planets Marga. 2. None of the monks received an invitation to the meeting, but all were informed by telepathy. 3. All bhikkhus have all 6 magical powers, and 4. All previous bhikkhus were ordained by the Buddha by declaring, good future, because if we know how to properly contemplate feelings, then insight into the path and fruition can be attained. In fact, there is no self-entity present in feelings. Feelings are impermanent, there is no essence found in them. The Buddha compared feeling to the rising ripples when a stone is thrown into water, and also to the bubbles when rain falls on rivers and lakes. Just like bubbles on the surface of water, feelings on the body also arise and disappear from time to time. The arising and passing away of feelings are clearly contemplated by meditators practicing vipassana meditation. Ordinary people think that feelings of pleasure, pain, and equanimity last forever. However, if we are always aware of the physical and mental phenomena that arise at the threshold of the six senses, every time we see, hear, smell, eat, touch and think, then the disappearance of feelings every moment is carefully observed. This contemplation becomes clear when we attain the insight of seeing birth and death, Udayabhayana Passananana. The above-mentioned wisdom is the experience of seeing the arising and passing away of physical and spiritual phenomena. The next insight is the wisdom of contemplation of dissolution, Bhangana Passananana, which is experiential knowledge that clearly sees the dissolution of physical and mental phenomena. Thus, wisdom will clearly see that feelings are similar to water bubbles. The meditator can understand through personal experience that feelings are impermanent and that we cannot exert control over them. A person who does not practice vipassana meditation, or a meditator who has not yet fully attained concentration, may not be able to see the passing away of feelings clearly. And so that person continues to think that feelings are permanent, desirable, or have a separate essence. In the Saddha Sutta, there are two terms used to refer to an ordinary person, living beings, and clinging to, or fondly clinging to, or entangled, as has been said defined in the sutra. Those two terms relate to attachment to feelings, or strong attachment to the five aggregates, 3. Aggregate of perception, Sanakanda collection of perceptions. One who still cherishes perceptions or is still attached to the aggregate of perception, which is the collection of perceptions, is called a sentient being, saddha. There are 6 types of perception in total: 1. Perception of the things seen, 2. Perception of sound, 3. Perception of smell, 4. Perception of taste, 5. Perception of touch, 6. Perception of dharma, things. The aggregate of perception, the collection of perceptions, is expressed by ordinary people as, I feel or I perceive. When an object is seen, the perception related to that object is such as, this is a person, this is a woman, or man, shape like this, time at that time, place point somewhere, etc. If an object making noise is heard, a similar perceptual process also arises. When one remembers things in that way, the aggregate of perception is erroneously expressed as an individual entity. That misinterpretation is due to affection or attachment to perceptions. The Buddha compared the aggregate of perception to an illusion, an illusory phenomenon that appears to be real. In the desert, the illusion of a puddle or an oasis may appear. When we drive on a hot sunny day, the road ahead looks like it's flooded. It is often said that in the summer, deer in India are lured by illusions and race to the puddle where they usually drink, only to find that the puddle has dried up. But an illusion is just an error of vision, caused by rays of light from layers of air of different weights and temperatures. In the same way, those who mistakenly perceive sight, sound, smell, taste, touch and dharma, things, think they are men, women, animals, etc. They are attached to false, distorted, interpretations of perception. Therefore, an individual is called a sentient being, saddha. If he is firmly attached to the aggregate of perception, or is heavily entangled with the aggregate of perception. To get rid of that erroneous view, the meditator must be aware of all physical and spiritual phenomena that arise at the threshold of the 6 senses. When a person has reached a strong level of concentration, the cause and effect relationship will emerge clearly in the mind. Once that relationship is noted, the temporary meditator will experience the disappearance of physical and spiritual phenomena. That deception is like an illusion of the eyes. In fact, the meditator, through his own experience, will clearly see the nature of the arising and passing away of all phenomena. He will clearly understand that the general characteristics of those phenomena are impermanent, causing suffering and having no soul at all, for aggregate of formations, Sankarakanda collection of mental formations. The Buddha said, O good man Radha, the reason why a being is called a sentient being, Satta, is because of the fact of having volitional actions, mental formations, that are cherished or heavily entangled. There are two types of mental formations, Sankara. 1. Behavior is influenced by conditions. 2. Behavior that facilitates influence. The first type of mental formations, conditioned, are physical and mental phenomena that arise due to four factors. 1. Intentional action, creating karma, kama, 2. Consciousness, 3. Weather, and 4. Nourishment. Starting from the moment of conception, conditioned mental phenomena are consciousness and associated mental factors. The spiritual phenomena that developed later included, 1. The sensitive nature of the eyes, 2. The sensitive nature of the ear, 3. Sensitive nature of the nose, 4. Sensitive nature of the tongue, 5. The sensitive nature of the body and, 6. The mind. All of the above items are mental formations, Sankara, influenced by past karma. These conditioned mental formations, influenced by consciousness, include all physical acts of the body and mouth. Bending, stretching, moving, walking, standing, sitting, speaking, smiling, all are mental actions created by consciousness. Mental factors arise depending on each other, each affecting the other. We can call them mental formations that create conditions for influence, or mental formations that are conditioned. Hot or cold temperatures are the aggregates of formations that are conditioned by the influence of the weather. The change in heat in the body after digesting food is due to the aggregates of actions being conditioned by the influence of nourishing food. Successive mental states and mental states are also conditioned mental formations, because they are influenced by the mental phenomena that have preceded them. Therefore, all physical and mental phenomena, conditioned by four factors, karma, consciousness, weather and food, are called conditioned aggregates. And these aggregates, because they are influenced by related causes, are also impermanent and cause suffering, according to the Buddha. When viewed through vipassana wisdom, the five aggregates are seen as impermanent, causing suffering and lacking a self. To be able to clearly see and understand the three characteristics of the physical and mental aggregates, the meditator must always be mindful of them, every time they arise. When the intensity of concentration becomes strong enough, there arises in the mind a very sharp awareness of the arising and passing away of the three characteristics, even if they are fleeting for a moment. Thus, their impermanent nature will become clear in the meditator's mind. Under the heavy pressure caused by the constant arising and passing away of mental formations, the practitioner feels afraid of them. Then the nature causing suffering also becomes clearer in his mind. This way of contemplation has been recognized by the practice taught by the Buddha. We are about to consider the second type of mental formations, that is, those that cause the conditions that produce influence. According to the scriptures in the Pali Canon, Samyutta Nikaya, Samyutta, Khanda Vagga, this type of mental formations is defined as the phenomenon that causes physical and mental actions. Among the five aggregates, each aggregate has its own function, and can only perform that function. However, the aggregate of form is very specific and unique. Although it cannot do anything on its own, the aggregate of form is transformed by opposing environmental factors. Due to its essence, the manifestation of the form aggregate only emerges when it is transformed by the formation aggregates. The aggregate of feeling can only be experienced through objects that are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Just like a secretary, the aggregate of perception can only record. As for the consciousness aggregate, it is only aware of objects, only seeing, only hearing, etc. But with the aggregate of formations, walking, standing, sitting, lying, bending, stretching, moving, smiling, speaking, thinking, seeing, hearing, and all physical or mental activities, are caused by aggregates of actions cause everything. The desire to walk, stand, sit and sleep is all due to the aggregate of volitions. Motivated by the aggregate of formations, all physical, verbal, or mental movements arise. Therefore, the manifestation of the aggregates in physical, verbal, or spiritual form is mistakenly recognized as being performed by some self-entity, by some I. Appears, and from there arises attachment or attachment. In fact, the aggregate of formations has no inner core at all, no soul at all. The manifestations of the aggregate of formations are only natural phenomena that occur due to a process of cause and effect correlation. The aggregate of actions has no soul, and that is why living beings are oppressed. In the aggregate of actions, there is no core, no essence at all, there is only the cause of suffering. Whoever associates with bad friends, or studies with a bad teacher, or reflects improperly on his own experiences, can commit unwholesome physical, verbal, and mental actions. Mind. Examples of unwholesome and reprehensible conduct, in this present life, include violation of law and order, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, and gambling. Influenced by greed and anger. Inappropriate actions and words lead to loss of property, punishment, loss of friends, and suffering accidents in this present life. And beyond the present life, one must be reborn in evil realms. To avoid such misfortunes, we need to clearly understand that we are burdened by the willful actions of the aggregates of formations. Looking closely with insight wisdom, we can observe that there is no self, no inner core, no essence existing in the aggregate of formations. That's why the Buddha compared the aggregate of volitions to banana peels. The sheaths look like a tree trunk and appear to have a solid core inside. However, if you use a knife to cut and peel off each sheath, it turns out that it is hollow, with no core or marrow at all. There are only sheaths, each sheath, layer after layer. Like the stem of the banana tree, the aggregate of volitional formations has no intrinsic essence of any value. The aggregate of formations consists of 52 dependent mental factors, headed by the volitional mental factor, Satana. The 20 most important mental states among them are, 1. The mental factors of contact, phasa, arise when the sensitive parts of the 6 senses come into contact with objects such as, objects seen, sounds heard, etc. 2. The mental factor of attention, manasikara, arises when there is attention to things. 3. Mental concentration, ekagata, when there is concentration of mind on a single point on the object. 4. Mental thought, vitakka, is the initial contact of the mind with an object. 5. Consciousness, vikara, is continuous, prolonged contact, fixing the mind on the object to examine. 6. Effort, viriya, mental factor. 7. Mental factor of greed, lobha. 8. Mental factors of anger, dosa, anger. 9. Mental state of ignorance, moha, confusion. 10. Arrogance, mana, arrogance. 11. Wrong view, dithi, wrong opinion. 12. Mental states of doubt, visakicha. Towards the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. 13. Non-covetous mental state, alobha, not greedy. 14. No anger, adosa, no anger. 15. The mental factor of non-delusion, amoha, without confusion. 16. Mental factor of faith, sada, belief. 17. Mental state of awareness, sati, kama. 18. Mental factors, metta, kama. 19. Mental factors of compassion, karuna, kama. 20. Mental factors of joy, mudita. Body actions, verbal actions and mental actions are motivated by the mental factor of volition, satana, and create many karmic actions, sankhara dhamma. However, only the conditioned mental formations, the actions, words and mental movements, can be clearly seen. The wrong view that all actions are done by I arises because of actions. That's why the Buddha said, when someone is either affectionate or heavily entangled in the aggregates of formations, then that person is called a sentient being, satta. 5. Aggregate of consciousness, Vinanakanda collection of knowledge. The Buddha said, O good man Radha, attachment to consciousness or to the aggregate of consciousness occurs in living beings. When attachment to consciousness occurs, that living being is called a living being. Satta, the consciousness aggregate includes 1. I consciousness, 2. Ear consciousness, 3. Mouth consciousness, 4. Tongue consciousness, 5. Body consciousness, and 6. Consciousness. Those 6 types of consciousness have been wrongly perceived as having a self or soul, because they have different characteristics from inanimate objects such as stones, rocks, pieces of wood, and crockery. So when consciousness perceives any object that comes into contact with the threshold of the 5 senses, that consciousness is interpreted as a self or a soul. Actually, there is no soul or self in the consciousness aggregate. Among the 52 types of spiritual phenomena, the majority of people in this world only recognize consciousness, and understand it as mind or soul. They are not yet capable of distinguishing other related mental factors, such as contact, volition, perception, feeling, etc. Not only humans, but also gods think that consciousness is the self, or soul. But no matter what people see or think, the self, the soul, never exists. When lacking in profound wisdom, a person can cling to consciousness and believe that it is an eternal soul. The Buddha compared consciousness to an illusion, a smooth illusion, a trick of a magician. Ordinary people mistakenly view I consciousness as a woman, a man, a dog, a cat, a hen, a bird, etc. They also mistakenly perceive consciousness as I see, I hear, I smell, I taste, I touch and I think. Such erroneously conceived knowledge is completely contrary to the absolute truth. Because of these mistaken notions, we cling to the aggregate of consciousness as a permanent entity. That is why the Buddha said, the name for living beings is given to refer to those who are heavily entangled in the aggregate of consciousness. There are 5 types of consciousness that arise at the threshold of the 5 senses: 1. Eye consciousness at the moment of seeing, 2. Ear consciousness at the time of hearing, 3. Night consciousness at the time of smelling the nose, 4. Tongue consciousness at the time of eating, and 5. Body consciousness at the time of touching. At the time we experience sense objects, images and sounds have not yet been conceptualized as human entities. Consciousness, by itself, has only one function, mere awareness of the object. That consciousness simply sees the object's form or hears the sound. However, if we examine the thinking process, we will also see consciousness at the door of the mind. Recalling and reflecting on the objects that appear before the threshold of the 5 senses, the mind immediately conceptualizes those objects. Giving an example of the thinking process. A young novice monk who attained arhatship taught a bhikkhu named Pautala how to observe consciousness. And for the benefit of you in gaining some knowledge of how the process of thought arises, we will briefly consider the stages of consciousness that arise at the threshold of the eyes. When an object can be sensed but there is no contact between that object and the sensitive parts of the senses, the bhavanga consciousness, that is, the continuous stream of life, still flows calmly. It's afternoon, without being disturbed. But when a visible object comes close and touches the sensitive part of the eye, the continuous flow of the inner mind part is temporarily suspended. That last moment of the bhava mind is replaced by visual consciousness at the threshold of the eye, and informs the consciousness to pay attention to the object present before the eyes. When the announcement at the eye door ends, the eye consciousness appears, and at that moment, the eye consciousness in that eye is only aware of the presence of that tangible object. When the eye consciousness disappears, the receiving consciousness arises and accepts the object of that tangible object. When the receiving consciousness disappears, the investigating consciousness arises to consider whether the object that has just been received is pleasant or unpleasant. When the consciousness of investigation disappears, the consciousness of determination arises, deciding whether the object just examined is interesting or boring. Following the conscious decision, there are 7 successive mental movements, jhana, that arise to fully experience the object. When the last jhana mental activity period ends, 2 periods of conscious awareness arise to review the past thinking process. After the second moment of noting consciousness disappears, the flow of mind part, existence, bhavanga, returns to its smooth, even flow as before. These are normal stages of a thinking process. However, when a tangible object is not strongly touched by the sensitive parts of the senses, the mental movements, jhana, will have fewer stages in the thinking process. Sometimes the thinking process ends right at the seventh conscious movement, without being recorded by the next two conscious movements. At the moment this life is about to end, only 5 jhanas arise, instead of the usual 7. And when the patient is too weak, that thinking process stops at the conscious decision. When vipassana concentration becomes very strong, the stages of the thinking process also stop at the decisive consciousness. But in this case, 2 or 3 moments of decisive consciousness arise. And the successive stages of the thinking process cease. This causes the bhavanga stream of existence to continue flowing smoothly without interruption. In the previous description of the thought process in seeing a visible object, consciousness is only aware of the object at the level of absolute reality. But that's just the beginning. That process has not yet conceptualized the object perceived by the eye in the usual conventional way, such as seeing it as a woman or a man, for example. Moving from the level of absolute reality to the level of conceptualization requires 4 stages of thinking process. The thinking process when seeing, as described before, arises first, then after a few moments. The mental movement of bhavanga consciousness follows. Then 3 thought processes at the mind door occur, interrupted by a number of bhavanga mental movements. The first process of cultivating the mind door consists of 10 times as follows: 1 time of consciousness at the mind door reporting receiving the object, 7 times of bhavanga mental movement, and 2 times of consciousness noting. Then the continuous flow of bhavasiddha, bhavanga, continues to flow again. The form of the object is perceived by the thinking process at the eye door, and transferred intact without any change to the thinking process at the mind door. Therefore, the object has not yet been conceptualized. In the second stage of the thinking process at the mind door, consciousness grasps the idea of shape, for example the female silhouette or the male image of the object. And in the third mental door of the thinking process, consciousness grasps the idea of name. But ultimately, this concept is not correct. Conceptualization has shown that it is easy to be deceived by consciousness. At the eye door and at the first mind door, the thinking process only grasps the ultimate object. But in the next 2 thought doors, the thinking process feels the ideas again, causing the invisible object to be deformed. What happens at the eye door when the eye consciousness reactivates also happens in the same way at the other senses when hearing, smelling, tasting and touching. Of the 4 thinking processes, the first 2 processes grasp the ultimate object, while the last 2 processes conceptualize the object, according to conventions of shape and name. If you are only aware of tangible objects, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations on the body, or stop right at the first thought of the thinking process, then the object of the tangible object will only be felt. Accept it as it is and not be interpreted, distorted, according to convention. So to be able to maintain the level of absolute reality, the meditator must not consider the name or form of tangible objects that may stand out during meditation. Those objects should only be recorded exactly as the senses experience them, that is, only seeing, only hearing, only smelling, only tasting, only touching or only thinking about it. Thus, if we note seeing at the exact moment the eyes see, then the thinking process of the consciousness aggregate is stopped by that noting consciousness, both stop at the level of absolute reality. Therefore, as long as we hold firmly to the object of perception and conscious awareness, the conceptualization of the thought process of the consciousness aggregate no longer has any opportunity to interfere. This way of contemplation is in accordance with the teachings of Ditthidaitamata, a Pali word meaning just being aware of. Furthermore, meditators also gain the ability to distinguish between physical phenomena and spiritual phenomena. The meditator will clearly understand that the tangible object being perceived and the sensitive part of the eyes have no intellectual capacity, a function that only the consciousness aggregate has. 6. Destroy the 5 aggregates. When the temporary arising and passing away of all phenomena become evident, their nature of impermanence, suffering, and non-self will be experienced. Just as the meditator distinguishes between physical and mental phenomena at the time of seeing, so he will perceive physical and mental phenomena at the time of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking. He will also clearly see the three characteristics, impermanence, suffering, non-self, and the cause and effect relationship between them. The eyes of people who have not practiced vipassana meditation are often deceived into mistakenly perceiving that they are seeing a man, a woman, or a self, etc. However, with vipassana wisdom, we cannot find a self, because that self does not exist. We only see the temporary appearance and disappearance of all phenomena. Physical and spiritual. These phenomena do not last long because they are swept away by the concentration of the noting mind. These phenomena only appear temporarily and then disappear. Because all phenomena, whether mental or physical, arise separately and disappear alone, meditators will clearly see that they are not worthy of our trust, and it also causes dissatisfaction and more suffering. Furthermore, in phenomena, the meditator will clearly see their selfless nature, their soul, at birth. They cannot control themselves and must depend on the causes related to them. Therefore, all five aggregates, form aggregate, feeling aggregate, perception aggregate, volitional aggregate and consciousness aggregate, have only three characteristics: impermanent, causing suffering and having no soul. To see clearly those three characteristics, we must meditate, and through meditation we can destroy all five aggregates. The Buddha taught how to destroy attachment to the five aggregates. He said to Ayasma Radha, "Good man Radha, children play with sand, build huts on the roadside and in the park. Imitating adults, they shape clay pots to cook food. Until when they still cling to that game, seeing those toys as my house, my property, and my belongings, then they are still enjoying themselves. And if someone comes to destroy the toys, then they will cry and run to tell their parents. As long as the children are not bored with those toys, they will still enjoy playing with them. But that attachment, that desire, that great longing, that burning desire, will disappear once the children begin to tire of playing. At that time, they will destroy and throw away all the toys. Like those little children, people cling tightly to the five aggregates. Regarding the five aggregates, people mistakenly make inferences such as, this is me. This is my wealth, these are my belongings, this is my son, this is my daughter, and this is my property, so they cling tightly to the five aggregates. And because of that, they must sink into the ocean of suffering of samsara, and never escape the vicious circle of rebirth. The Buddha continued to instruct Radha with the following words: "Good man Radha, you should destroy the aggregate of form and practice the abandonment of craving. Just like those children destroy sand huts when they get tired of playing with those toys. You, too, must destroy the aggregate of form and throw it away. Practice until the craving is destroyed. Just like destroying the aggregate of form, you should practice to destroy the remaining four aggregates: the aggregate of feeling, the aggregate of perception, the aggregate of actions and the aggregate of consciousness. And continue practicing until all five aggregates are destroyed." The Buddha explained to Radha that the cessation of craving means achieving the peace of nirvana, nibbana. What is nirvana? To understand the nature of nirvana, we must first understand its meaning. Nirvana comes from the Pali word nibbanam, whose original meaning is cessation, or whose essence is peace. Destroy what? That is, it is necessary to completely destroy all three circles that are continuously continuing without stopping: 1. Circle of defilement, kilesa vada, 2. The circle of actions, kama vada, and 3. The circle of consequences, vipaka vada. The cycle of delusion includes ignorance, craving and attachment. The cycle of karma includes wholesome and unwholesome actions. The circle of consequences includes rebirth consciousness, physical and mental phenomena, the 6 doors of the 6 senses, the 6 types of contact and the types of feelings. Whatever we see, hear, smell, taste, touch and think is part of the circle of consequences. Not knowing the true nature of consciousness at the time of seeing and hearing is due to ignorance. The presumption that I know, I see, and I hear is also due to ignorance. Holding the view that what has been seen or heard is permanent or enjoyable is also due to ignorance. Being attached to what is seen or heard is also due to ignorance. That affection is called craving, tanha. Attachment, that is, clinging, upadana, occurs when someone clings very tightly to what is seen or heard. This is how the circle of defilement continues to spin forever. When someone clings to the aggregates with desire and judges them as enjoyable, he is trying to satisfy the desires of the mind. And thus the circle of karma is created. Influenced by intentional conditioning, rebirth consciousness arises immediately, after the time of common life consciousness. Consciousness of rebirth causes the arising of physical and mental phenomena, the six senses, contact and feeling. Their arising creates a circle of effects, and what we see and hear are part of this circle of effects. Depending on the cycle of consequences, ignorance, craving and attachment arise. These contaminations are also part of the cycle of defilements. Under the influence of the circle of defilements, the circle of consequences arises. Thus, all three circles continuously interact with each other, holding each other one after the other. If you maintain continuous awareness, then a temporary awareness of the path of practice, will arise due to the power of insight wisdom. Once one has clearly seen nirvana through the insight of path and fruition, the defilements, in the cycle of defilements, can no longer arise. Because the defilements have been eliminated, intentional actions no longer arise. When there are no more intentional actions, the resulting physical and mental phenomena will no longer arise. Thus, when an arhat, fully enlightened, passes away, he will never be reborn again. The resulting physical and spiritual phenomena no longer occur after the arhat's awareness of his final fate. That supernatural phenomenon that extinguishes all suffering is called nirvana. When a person experiences nirvana with the path and fruition of arhatship, all his suffering is eliminated. The essence of that cessation is called nirvana. But this is not the only explanation of nirvana. It also points to the end of the three cycles of delusion, karma and consequences. Before the power of insight into the arhat path, all three of those circles could no longer arise again. Thus, nirvana can also be explained as the core that has ended the three vicious circles. That's why the Buddha urged us to make every effort to practice until those three circles are completely destroyed, in other words, until craving is eradicated. The first step is the fulfillment of pure morality by observing the 5 precepts. After morality is perfected, concentration and wisdom must be attained through the practice of vipassana meditation. If a beginning meditator attains the first jhana level, he will be greatly helped, because the first jhana is the basis of the practice of insight meditation. If they have not yet reached that level, the meditator can also note the most prominent physical and spiritual phenomena at the threshold of the 6 senses at the exact moment they arise. It is difficult for a beginner to practice vipassana to note everything, but it is enough if the meditator only needs to note the most prominent phenomena. When walking, movements need to be noted. When sitting posture and other obvious phenomena should also be noted. Therefore, the Venerable Mahasi recommends that we observe the rising and falling of the abdomen, because it is easy for us to feel tension and movement. Besides, that place is the most prominent focus, easier to pay attention to than the breath. If the noting mind is stalled by thoughts or daydreams, just note them as thinking, dreaming, daydreaming. When sensations become evident such as bodily discomfort, heat and pain, note them as such. If you see or hear something, note seeing, hearing. When the level of concentration is not yet strong in the beginning, the mind often wanders here and there. If that happens, try to be aware of the mind wandering. Then temporarily when you reach a higher level of concentration, your mind will wander less. In the practice of continuous awareness, the noting mind will coincide with the object of contemplation of the rising and falling process. Sometimes, the mind still wanders, but not as often as before and not for too long. The moment the wandering is noted, the mind immediately stops. At that moment, the meditator immediately returns to noting the rising and falling of the abdomen. Thus, phenomena are obviously noted right at the moment they arise, by the past noting mind, by the present noting mind and by the upcoming noting mind. Purification of the mind, citta visuddhi, is achieved when each distinct and transient object is noted continuously. When the mind is pure, the object of contemplation is clearly observed. The meditator will clearly see the difference between physical phenomena and spiritual phenomena, and will also clearly distinguish the difference between the noting mind and its object. Because all noted events are clearly distinguished in the same way, the meditator will realize that only physical and spiritual phenomena exist in this body. That awareness is the wisdom of discrimination of name and form, namarupa pariketa nana. Purification of views, ditthi visuddhi, is realized when the insight of discriminating name and form arises in the meditator's mind. The cause and effect relationship between physical and mental phenomena will be understood through persistent practice of awareness. All physical functions such as walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, bending, stretching, and stepping are conditioned by the will, that is, the mind that wants. And the meditator will also understand, through experience, that seeing, or eye consciousness, arises due to these four factors: 1. The visual sense, eye, or sensitive part of the eye; 2. Tangible objects; 3. Light; and 4. Attention. The meditator will clearly understand that consciousness arises not only at the eye door, but also at the time of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, at the threshold of other senses as well. Understanding cause and effect means that the wisdom of distinguishing cause from effect, pakaya pariga nana, has been attained. When this insight is realized, the practitioner's mind is purified by being free from doubt, kenkavitarana visuddhi, purity beyond doubt. The doctrine of dependent origination, padikasamuppada, explains the supporting relationship between effects and conditioning factors. The understanding of cause and effect relationships based on the sutras is not the same as the knowledge brought by vipassana wisdom. Understanding according to the sutras is only theoretical knowledge, suttamiyapana. Or it may just be an extrapolation of the intellectual faculty, santaranapana. After overcoming the two types of knowledge mentioned above, we can achieve insight through visualization, bhavanamayapana, from our own personal experience. That's why we need to practice meditation. While practicing continuous awareness, the meditator will observe the arising and passing away of the objects of contemplation, exactly at the moment they come into being. Meditators will clearly see three stages: the origination, transition and disappearance of all phenomena. Because phenomena arise and pass away, their impermanent, unsatisfactory nature that causes suffering and non-self will be clearly understood. Understanding in this way, the meditator attains controlling wisdom, samasana nana, which is the first step of vipassana wisdom. Always alert, the meditator will observe the arising and passing away of phenomena that occur extremely quickly. Although phenomena appear and disappear very quickly, by this time the meditator has developed quite high concentration and awareness to be able to see them clearly. Sometimes, light or ecstasy is also experienced. When this happens, the insight into arising and passing away, udayabhayanapasana nana, has been developed. At this level, the concepts of form and substance have been penetrated by vipassana wisdom. But now the meditator will also see the ultimate phenomena arising and passing away. When one only contemplates the cessation of physical and mental phenomena, or witnesses their dissolution, then the wisdom of seeing cessation, bhanganapasana nana, is attained. There are still many higher levels to be reached. With constant practice, the wisdom of knowing fear, bhyadapathana nana, will be attained. And finally the meditator will attain the wisdom of equanimity, sankarupeka nana. At this level, wisdom reaches a level of balance and equanimity. Whatever is observed, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, the mind remains calm and quiet, never disturbed. The meditator is capable of visualizing all physical and mental phenomena, sankhara, clearly, and his mind is completely balanced between concentration and diligence. At the right time, when we contemplate every moment, the continuity of the arising and passing away of phenomena will be completely eradicated. Through the experience of observing the nature of complete cessation of nirvana, the meditator attains the path and the first fruit of sotapanna. When, through the path and attainment of arhatship, the highest level of enlightenment, the meditator experiences the nature of absolute cessation of nirvana. All three circles of delusion, mental, karmic action and consequences are also completely eliminated. The destruction of the circle of effects means the destruction of craving, the root cause of the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations and consciousness. With the cessation of craving, all suffering in the meditator is eradicated, and from now on there will be no more rebirth. Craving is the underlying cause, or root condition, of rebirth. As long as craving is not eliminated, we still have to be reborn. A large number of people look forward to rebirth after this life. But being born again means having to endure the sufferings associated with this existence. Therefore, rebirth should be seen as a terrible suffering. However, whoever knows clearly the dangerous nature of rebirth and wishes not to be reborn, that wish can only be fulfilled when he has eliminated craving, by reach the most advanced stage of enlightenment. The reason for having to be reborn again and again is craving, creating the five aggregates. And despite the fear of being reborn in hell, some people still have to be reborn in that realm. Getting to that terrible, evil place that no one wants is due to two important factors. The first factor is that the person has not yet been able to shake off the desire to be born again. And the second factor is that the unwholesome karma is so heavy that it has drawn that person into the evil path. Because he still lacks profound insight into the arhat path, the would-be Buddha is entangled in the vicious circle of samsara, for 4 asha periods and 100,000 microkalpas. He is not capable of seeing the path to liberation from the suffering of rebirth, life after life. Finally, as a hermit named Tien Hui, Sumedha, he met Dipankara Buddha and was predicted to become a true Buddha in the future. And only at that moment, as a Bodhisattva, did he begin the long quest to find out the cause of his tight bondage to samsara, and how to end it. That binding. Having attained complete enlightenment, the Buddha uttered the inspiring words of victory in the following verse: "Wandering through many lifetimes of samsara, I tried to find but never found the one who built this house. Being reborn forever is miserable. Oh there! House builder! Now that we see it, it's difficult to build more. The beam on the porch was broken, the rafters and trusses were left lying in disarray. I have now attained nirvana, craving and desire are completely destroyed." The above verses are full of meaning. According to the commentary, house builder refers to craving, and house is related to the five aggregates. Destroyed by the enlightened power of the omniscient Buddha, arm rod refers to defilements, kilesa, and ruins, rafters, trusses, and tied poles refer to acts of ignorance, avijja. A more detailed explanation, though lacking in poetry, is the following adaptation of the Buddha's verse: "Through the arhat path and right enlightenment, I have now clearly seen that craving is who created these five aggregates. Because this realization has been achieved through powerful wisdom, craving cannot rebuild the house of the five aggregates. I have completely destroyed them all mental defilements caused by ignorance. My mind rests in the realm of absolute cessation, tranquility takes the realm of nirvana as an object free from all attachment and will-making, naturally sink deeply into arhatship, samapatti, realization, peaceful meditation." Because of his infinite compassion for those who are studying the Dharma, the Buddha offered them the knowledge of enlightenment and liberation, which he diligently sought for a long time. Now, with the awareness of suffering, along with the boredom of being reborn in samsara, these two things should be used as inspiration to motivate meditators to go deeply into practicing the path that he taught. Discovered and revealed here. His teachings are very clear: uprooting craving will kill the cause of attachment, and thereby eliminate the five aggregates. These aggregates lead to the path of rebirth. And the path he went through was also very spacious. one had to practice vipassana meditation by contemplating the continuous arising and passing away of physical and spiritual phenomena. May all complete the Noble Eightfold Path. May all, through understanding the Noble Eightfold Path, uproot the root of craving. May all attain nirvana, the complete destruction of the 5 aggregates.
Thank you for spending your valuable time on my channel Journey to Enlightenment. Wishing you a very peaceful and happy day. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to my support channel. See you in the next video.